Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. This morning, we're talking about something that every single person in Central Louisiana and really around the country has not really an understanding, but has seen someone in their community, in their city, who is homeless. Well, our guests this morning are talking about our homeless population and how we can really be the change that we want to see in helping. This morning, we are joined by Joseph Buzzetta. He is the new executive director for the Central Louisiana Homeless Coalition.
Yes, ma'am.
We welcome him for the very first time, and we're also welcoming for the very first time Marsha Barbera. She is the president of Greater Central Louisiana Realtors Association. She's also a realtor at Keller Williams. She is a consummate volunteer and somebody I know that you're happy to have on your team.
Oh, absolutely.
Lady and gentlemen, good morning and welcome.
Thank you.
First of all, talk about the responsibility of taking on this incredibly important position.
Yes, ma'am. So the Homeless Coalition, we basically wear two hats. So one, we're a direct service agency. So we've got a resource facility where clients can come take showers, do laundry, receive mail. We also have a street outreach program that goes and meets individuals that are experiencing homelessness in the community, figure out what their needs are, try to get them connected to housing. And then we also have a supportive housing program that whenever they do qualify, whenever they do get in, we provide them with a rental subsidy and the case management to keep them housed. So ultimately, we follow clients from the streets into housing and forward. And the other hat that we wear is we are actually the lead agency for something called a continuum of care, which is a HUD designation that allows us to apply for federal dollars to get more grant money and get more programs, and then ultimately try to organize the community's response around homelessness. Because one thing the federal government realizes is that the housing interventions that work in California aren't going to work in Louisiana.
Sure.
And even by extension, they understand what the housing interventions that work in Shreveport and Baton Rouge aren't going to work in Alexandria as well. So what they say is, hey, we want y'all to organize the community's response and figure out how are you going to use these federal dollars to deal with the issue of homelessness as it presents in your community. And so that's another thing that we do is try to get more partners in and really figure out how do we want to move forward in addressing this issue as a community.
Wow. So Marsha, one of the first things that I asked you when we met was, in this world of busyness, especially being a busy realtor and everything else that you're doing in your life, how and why did you decide to choose the homeless population?
Well, every year the president of the association gets to choose their charity, and I'm very strong and passionate that I just do not believe that there should be homelessness. I just don't think that anyone should be homeless, especially our veterans. I don't think there should be a homeless population. So that became a passion of mine. And
but it's not something that just happened.
No.
It's been really on your heart since you started on the mission field, literally.
Well, I started in mission work in 1992 and doing different types of mission work, construction, a lot of construction. And then I go internationally to Honduras, and I saw, Honduras and Haiti are two of the most poverty-stricken areas in the world. And I've seen firsthand how people live in poverty and homelessness there and everything. And I just didn't realize that we had a population here until it kind of became public. I mean, you started seeing people on the street, and I started volunteering with the Volunteers of America on the H2O project, and having conversations with some of those people, and it just got on my heart that I felt like we needed to do something about it.
So for both of you, Joseph, you talked about before we started recording how you came into this community and how you loved it and loved working with the homeless population. But what we also talked about during the break is that most people really don't understand homelessness. What was your impression, Marsha, when you really became boots on the ground?
For the last 2 months, I was invited to be a volunteer on their outreach program, which is very early in the morning when we go out. And,
yes, it is.
3:45 in the morning. And we go out into the actual homeless camps and their home sites and things. And that was a very eye-opening experience. First of all, I didn't realize Central Louisiana had that many homeless. And I didn't realize that they are quite resourceful in setting up their camps and using whatever means they have to provide cover and shelter. and it's been an eye-opening experience, and like I said before, a heartwarming and a heart-wrenching experience at the same time.
And so talk about the 345 wake-up calls for yourself and for the volunteers. Why are we doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing about a lot of our programs is that we're federally funded through HUD, Housing and Urban Development. So a lot of people, whenever they hear of HUD, they think your Section 8 properties, but they do a whole lot more than just that. Ultimately,
because that's what I thought about.
Yeah, that whole agency is basically focused on how can we keep people housed. And so one thing about all of our programs is that it is a requirement that you experience something called literal homelessness, which is staying in an emergency shelter, a car, or a place not meant for human habitation. Okay. And then a lot of people say, well, how do you know they're homeless? Well, it is a federal requirement that we go out and verify those individuals at their campsite. So it is our responsibility to go out onto the streets, verify, and say, hey, we have literally woken this person up. We have seen that they are homeless.
Why so early, though?
It's mostly just to make sure that that these individuals really are homeless, because it's kind of it's one of the catch-22s is whenever we go out at 10, let's say we go out at 10 o'clock at night. Well, there's still people who are out and about, and so we really don't know, is this person asleep there? Are they not? And then to the same effect, if we go out at like say 6 o'clock, a lot of our homeless community is already up and moving around. Like they're going to the Salvation Army, they're heading over to our resource center. So that morning outreach is a sweet spot where whenever we go to those camps, we can say with certainty, hey, these people, they literally have slept there, so they definitely qualify for these programs.
So Marsha, what was your impression at 3:45 in the morning? First of all, what were you thinking that you were going to be walking into, really?
I really had no idea. But the team that went in, the members from both the coalition and VOA announced themselves as outreach.
How did they receive that? How do they receive that? Is that something that they're expecting?
I think they're expecting it because they've had communication with the coalition, and so everybody was very warm and receiving. Some of them were a little sleepy, but we usually have a little gift bag of necessities and hygiene items and water and snacks and stuff that we provide to them. And like you said, that sweet spot between 3:45 and 6 a.m. is the only time really you can catch them and verify their homelessness, because once it's 6 a.m., like you said, they're on the roads now trying to go and get their breakfast at either Salvation Army and then their lunch at Manna House or wherever those resources are. And then they're pretty much on the streets for the rest of the day and the evening. And some of them, like I was going downtown the other day for something and late at night and they were still out and about walking. So, their time in their encampment is not that much time, so you kind of have to catch them when you can.
In that window. And so, Joseph, you've been doing this really since you were in college and since you've been out of college.
Yes, ma'am.
What do we want to relay to people who really just think that they're just people on the streets? Because you said it's really, homelessness is not really a problem, but rather a symptom.
Yeah, so like the thing is, whenever people see individuals who are homeless, when you look at the average population, about 2% of the American population is experiencing literal homelessness. That's on the streets, in the cars. We're in really bad spots. But what I've found in doing direct care, because I used to be a street outreach worker prior to being our director, there's a lot of threads of trauma, a lot of threads of mental health, a lot of threads of substance abuse. And so what our goal is to figure out, okay, how can we get you into housing? And then ultimately, how can we work through those issues that caused you to end up on the streets? So whenever I see somebody who's experiencing homelessness, yes, we want to resolve that homelessness. We want to get them into housing, but there's always something that's more underneath the surface. Mm-hmm. And that's the one thing that I always try to stress is that homelessness, if we're not being relational with these clients and not teaching them how to be good tenants, be good neighbors, and ultimately be good community members, we're not really going to be making a headway, because a lot of these clients have some issues that they really need help working through.
Right, some underlying problems.
Absolutely.
Let's get a break here, but when we come back, we're going to really take a deeper dive when it comes to people that we see on the corners that are holding up signs and people who are really homeless, and how do we differentiate between the two? We're back with more after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. This morning, we're joined by the Executive Director of the Central Louisiana Homeless Coalition. He has taken over for Kendra.
Yes, ma'am.
And his name is Joseph Buzzetta. Kendra, as many of you know, carried the torch for many years, and now we're under new leadership, but great leadership. We're also joined by Marsha Barbera. She is the president for the Greater Central Louisiana Realtors Association. She's also a realtor at Keller Williams. She is one of those people that is a game changer. She is taking her time, her talent, and her energy to volunteer to be the change that she wants to see in Central Louisiana's Homeless Coalition. One of the things that I want to talk about that I know that's on many people's hearts are we are seeing a contingent of more and more people on street corners with signs saying any number of things. I need help, I need food, I need money. In fact, I was going through the Walmart parking lot and one lady said, I need money for my electric bill, and had a whole narrative on a cardboard piece of paper or whatever it is. And so what do you say to people who don't know whether to give, who make the decision to give? What do we need to know about it?
So the big thing that that I would love the community to understand is that a majority of the people who are panhandling are probably not homeless. There are a few of our homeless clients who are electing to not engage with us and go panhandling, but I would argue that that is the exception, not the rule. But the biggest thing is that a lot of times that money is not going to the causes that you think it is. I mean, it is. We don't have to really argue about whether or not giving money to people who say they're homeless and aren't is a good or bad thing. It's obviously a bad thing because we're supporting them lying. But the other challenge is, what do we do for people who really are homeless? You know, what goes on with that? And what I have seen in working with a lot of these clients, I have seen this community give to people who I have had conversations with who are actively abusing substances, actively not complying in mental health treatment. And it is such a dangerous thing to give to these individuals, whereas if we could get some of that money and help out to provide the counseling, provide the housing, we can really make those dollars stretch. All of our programs, like I said, either have some kind of rental subsidy attached to them or some kind of case management services, because our really goal is to help them out financially, but also help out with some of the behaviors that keep them homeless. And our average cost per day per client is roughly $35. And it's super cost efficient, but ultimately we need that money to help keep the programs going and cycling. And there's also that element of accountability. Like the one thing that I always encourage people, we do a monthly open house the first Tuesday of every month. You know, before you give money to us, come check that out. Come learn about the services that we have, because we want to be good stewards of your money. You know, we want to have that accountability. We want to say, hey, if you give us X amount of dollars, we can say this is where it's going to, and these are the outcomes that it is that they're getting.
So, Marsha, as a volunteer, and as somebody that you're throughout Central Louisiana and you're seeing people, how do we help people understand that when you give $1 or when you feel guilty and you give $5, that's really not furthering anybody's cause, even though we feel guilty and we feel, I don't know why we feel guilty. Maybe we feel guilty because we're not homeless and they are. Any number of reasons. But what do you say to people about taking essentially those donations that they're giving to people who are panhandling and redirecting that money to the Homeless Coalition?
Well, I agree totally that because there are differences in the homeless community and the panhandlers. And we don't know any of them's situation. You don't know if they're having substance abuse problems or mental health problems. And just like Joseph said, if you can rather take those monies and give them to the Homeless Coalition, they have guidelines and things that they have to operate by. And they are working through all those different entities to help their mental health issues, help their substance abuse issues, help their housing issues. So it's not just a slam dunk thing. They have several different categories that they have to work through with each of these individuals. And I would say, please don't hand money out at the street corners because you just don't know where it's going. If you want to funnel that money, if you want to give to the coalition where there are guidelines, there are federally mandated guidelines that they have to adhere to. And that money is going to be used for the true homeless. And again, they go out monthly and identify what they call literal or street homeless. We see for our own eyes that they are sleeping under the stars. They are sleeping without cover, as evidenced the other day, Friday when I was there. A man with absolutely no cover, no tent, no tarp, sleeping out under the stars.
And speaking of sleeping out under the stars, you are really spearheading a program where more homes are going to be built.
Well, with the Realtors Association, it seems like a no-brainer that we should be involved with this. And how we haven't been involved with this in the past, I don't know. But it's a passion of mine, and I feel like in speaking with our investors, our developers, and landlords across the community, that if they have units that are not being rented right now, they need to contact Joseph, because he can get them in with this federal program. And
the federal program will help to pay for their rent.
Absolutely. Will help pay for their rent, and there's a case manager assigned to each one of the individuals, correct?
Yes.
So I just feel like we need to direct some attention that direction. They have 100 people on a waiting list right now for housing. We are in desperate need for housing for these individuals. And I know that there are landlords that have vacant apartments and vacant rental properties that are available, and I can do the math. You either get this zero,
right,
or you get the federal money. So I think that there would be people that, if they understand the program and are educated on the program, that they would be blessed to do this, because there's just such a need. And I know that there are investors and landlords and builders and developers out there that could take advantage of this program.
Absolutely. And for those people, Joseph, who do want to take advantage of being the change that they want to see, what do you tell them about making the connection?
Yeah, so step one is to contact us over at the Homeless Coalition, because there's a bunch of different programs, and each one has their own individual eligibility criteria, its own operation. So step one is really to contact us. So we want to make sure that we're explaining the whole system, the entire process. That way our landlords are educated to know kind of what the partnership entails. And then from there, a lot like working with our homeless community, it's about building that relationship. So once we build those relationships, we really help connect the right client with the right landlord, and ultimately keep that landlord happy and that client housed. So it really is a win-win for everybody.
And so before we've got to go, talk about volunteerism and what people need to know about how they can volunteer.
Yeah, so the biggest thing is, if you want to volunteer, we're looking at trying to update a couple of things with our continuum. We've got some feedback from landlords, feedback from the community about how we can really kind of beef up our volunteer opportunities. So step one, follow us on Facebook. We make sure that we try to keep that live and up to date. It's Central Louisiana Homeless Coalition. You can come check out our website, cenlahomeless.org. And then also, too, whenever I mentioned that continuum of care, that kind of community response, that has its own website. It's cenlacoc.org. So that has all the resources, all the information. And then, of course, if you have any questions, feel free, give us a call, shoot us a Facebook message. We're local, and we really are here to connect with the community.
Absolutely. There's so much more to talk about, and this is just another beginning. Joseph Buzzetta, we want to thank you for all of the work that you're doing and all of the work that you will do. Marsha, thank you so much for being a community game changer.
Well, thank you. I think there's a lot of game changers in our community, and I would urge anybody and everybody to jump on board, whatever they're passionate about. And if they don't have a resource, then they need to come to the coalition and volunteer, because there are several opportunities for them.
There you go. Hey, everybody, stay on point. We're back after this.